What's up, you beautiful bastards? Hope you've had a fantastic Monday. Welcome back to the Philip DeFranco Show. Buckle up, hit that like button, otherwise I will punch you in the throat, and let's just jump into it. And the first thing we're going to talk about today are the updates around the situation with Onision, aka Greg, or James Jackson. Now, we've covered this story a couple of times, updating along the way. If you want a more detailed build-up to where we are now, I'm going to link to our previous coverage down below. But the simplified version is Onision has been accused of predatory behavior and grooming by several women, and the span of these allegations is close to a decade long. And the allegations claim that he's doing this with his partner Kai, who he has 2 kids with. And with this situation, you also have Chris Hansen, who you may know from things like To Catch a Predator, who has actually been covering this story very thoroughly on his YouTube channel, Have a Seat with Chris Hansen. He's been talking to accusers and others related to the case. He also recently went to Onision's home in Washington to see if he could talk to him and get his side of the story. Right, because notably here, and I always want to mention this, Onision has not been charged. He has consistently denied all of these allegations. After that, Onision actually filed a court order against Hansen, as well as one against a YouTuber by the name of Repsion, aka Daniel Sulzbach, who has also been talking about the allegations against him. And when this part all started unfolding a little over a week ago, we didn't know too much about the order. But now, we do have more details on it because the court appearance happened for it on Friday, and here's what happened. So first thing first, the order was specifically for protection of harassment. And in Hansen's case, it was an emergency order. Mike Morris, a lawyer working with Hansen on this case, made a video describing this.
Mr. Jackson alleges that Mr. Hansen was a stalker, showed up at the house, making hateful and harassment type videos since August of 2019.
And reportedly, Onision filed this without an attorney, so he and Kai were representing themselves, though of the two, only Onision showed up to the courtroom. Also, of note here, it turns out they never actually formally served Chris Hansen, which is a step that's supposed to happen when filing a court order against someone. But still, when the court appearance happened on Friday, Naomi, who's Hansen's lawyer, flew out to Washington to represent him and asked for the case to be dismissed since Hansen had never been served. And as far as why, it turned out Onision did serve a Chris Hansen in Connecticut, where Hansen is based, but it was not the same Chris Hansen, the one actually involved. And Morris ended up actually tweeting out a response from that other Chris Hansen who did get served. Right, so that was one of the first things they had to resolve in the courtroom. But then what we ended up seeing was that Onision ended up voluntarily dismissing the matter. Now, a quick note here, Chris Hansen's lawyer tried to get the case dismissed with prejudice, meaning that the case would be finalized, done forever, it could never be brought back up. But there, the judge ended up dismissing without prejudice, meaning that it could be brought up again. Now, as far as Repsion's case, those charges were also voluntarily dismissed. In fact, Onision had actually filed for dismissal already, meaning that Repsion got lawyers and headed to court for essentially no reason. Though, of note, it appears Daniel doesn't think the situation is quite over yet, tweeting, "I guess he's going to sue me in civil court at some point is my guess for attempted, quote, slander and damages. All I've ever done is address things you've done publicly." We also saw Daniel start a GoFundMe, noting, quote, "I am out $2,500 for taking the proper steps to protect myself from false accusations," adding, "Any donations would be greatly appreciated to pay off my credit from my attorney." And that GoFundMe, as of recording this video, has over 2,800 donors, raising $22,573. So there's all that. It is going to be interesting to see if Daniel is right, if we do see more from Onision's side here, where he's swinging out. From Onision's side, he's put his Twitter on private, so no public statements being made there. Also, as far as any more information, according to Hansen, who's been looking into these accusations against Onision even further, in the year 2019 alone, the police were called to his house on 19 occasions, with him saying the reason for these having to do with either inappropriate relations with girls or potential child neglect, but Hansen also confirming that there are investigations into these matters. But yeah, ultimately that's where we are right now. There is all this other side stuff where you had people commenting on the very odd way he was dressed, that he might have been wearing like a knife-proof vest or a Kevlar vest of some sort. Personally, I don't know, but also it wouldn't surprise me. One of my earliest memories of Greg was at one of the first VidCons, and I think it was a knife-proof vest. I just remember that and other things being somewhat weird. But yeah, obviously we're gonna keep our eyes on this story and see what happens next. And also, what are your thoughts on this in general? The self-dismissal, what do you think will happen next? I'd love to hear from you. Then we should talk about updates around the coronavirus outbreak. We talked about this last week. It began in the Chinese city of Wuhan and has significantly worsened over the weekend. As of recording, the death toll is now at least 81, and the number of confirmed cases is over 2,700. Now, a majority of these cases have been found in China, but several have been detected in other nations across 4 continents, including the United States, Australia, Taiwan, Japan, and France. As far as the United States, on Sunday, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, confirmed 3 newly detected cases in California and Arizona, bringing the overall number of infected people in the U.S. to 5. The other cases were found last week in Washington and Illinois, with the CDC adding, while this is a serious public health threat, CDC continues to believe the immediate risk to the U.S. general public is low at this time. Which, of note, internationally, there have been no deaths from this. All of them have come from inside of China. As far as China itself, in efforts to control the outbreak, plans have been made to rapidly build a new hospital, as well as travel bans being imposed around the nation, affecting millions of people. Also, as conditions have worsened, Chinese officials are facing criticism from people saying that the response to the outbreak was too slow. In response to that, you had Wuhan's mayor defending himself in an interview with the state broadcaster CCTV, saying that he had to wait for authorization from Beijing officials before he could make certain critical information public. Though, in the face of his own self-defense, he's also offered to step down from his position, saying that he and the city's Communist Party secretary will resign if it will appease the public. Also, in further attempts to impose travel bans, the Chinese government extended the Lunar New Year holiday by 3 days. That week-long celebration started on Friday and was supposed to end this Thursday, but the spreading virus threw a wrench in many people's travel plans and celebrations, so now employees won't have to return to work until February 3rd. Also, in addition to China's imposed travel bans, the United States, France, and Japan have all announced plans to evacuate their citizens from Wuhan. This while reportedly other countries are working on similar plans. Also, from the business side of this, we're seeing reports that Disney, McDonald's, Starbucks, and other US companies with significant exposure in China are suspending operations as they respond to the outbreak of the coronavirus. But ultimately, that's where we are with this story now, and we'll keep eyes on it. Of course, I'd love to know your thoughts on this one. But from that, I want to share some stuff I love today in Awesome, brought to you by Raycon. And Raycon, if you don't know, it's an awesome company that was founded because people were sick of premium audio being so expensive. So along with a bunch of audio engineers and music industry people, they developed Raycon's line of awesome wireless headphones and earbuds. And their latest model, the E25, is definitely my favorite, with 6 hours of playing time, seamless Bluetooth pairing, more bass, and more compact design that gives you a nice noise isolating fit, and ends up just kind of being a bonus that they're stylish and come in some fun new colors. And along with being stylish, they're comfortable, sound amazing, but kind of the most important thing is that they're really minimal in design. I've been trying them out, and they're the only headphones that actually fit with my helmet on, so it's nice I don't actually have to sacrifice quality there. And that's because Raycon earbuds sound just as amazing as other premium audio brands, but start at just half the price. So if you want to join me in owning a pair of your own, click that link in the description down below to get 15% off your order. Click the link, check it out, and enjoy. And the first bit of awesome today is the A Conversation With podcast is returning in 2 days on Wednesday at noon Pacific time. Set your alarm, or I don't know, subscribe to youtube.com/aconvawith, turn on notifications, follow me on Twitter, I don't know. But it's coming back with friend of the show, Gus Johnson. It's a fun time, had a blast. I feel like it was a little bit of a therapy session for both of us. But yeah, look forward to that. We had Pixar giving us Cooking with Pixar. We got a producers roundtable with Charlize Theron and others. We had 17 teaching you K-pop slang. CGP Grey gave us Your New Year's Resolution Has Already Failed. We had Adam Driver's Chill Monologue, which was actually kind of one of my favorites. Also, in general, is a pretty decent episode. If you want to see the full versions of anything I just shared, the secret link of the day, any of the stories, things we didn't even get to, links as always are in the description down below. And from that, we need to talk about the incredibly depressing news that we saw yesterday that Kobe Bryant and his 13-year-old daughter Gianna, as well as 7 others, died in a helicopter crash yesterday. Now, there's almost no way that this is the first time that you're hearing about this news. It felt like it took over an entire day on all platforms, almost all interactions. And while there's been a lot of speculation as to why the aircraft went down, personally, I'm waiting for the preliminary police report. What I wanted to talk about with this story were a few of the things connected to it. First up is the situation and the issues with reporting. The news was initially broken by TMZ, and then other major outlets like ABC, the BBC, ESPN ended up following it. But notably here, the TMZ didn't just beat media coverage, they also reportedly beat the police. And that was a big deal because the coverage was so fast, it actually beat police as they were trying to reach the victims as next of kin. And this is something that LA Sheriff Alex Villanueva actually hit on at a press conference yesterday, specifically name-dropping TMZ.
There is wide speculation as to who the identities are. However, it is entirely inappropriate right now to identify anyone by name until the coroner has made the identification through their very deliberative process, and they've made notifications to next of kin. And it'd be extremely disrespectful to understand that your loved one was perished and you learn about it from TMZ. That is just wholly inappropriate, so we're not going to be going there.
You know, TMZ has a history of breaking celebrity deaths, but with this story specifically, you saw a lot of people slamming TMZ for reporting the deaths before the victims' families had been notified. But it also wasn't just TMZ being hit. I mean, right out of the gate, you had ABC News reporter Matt Gutman reporting that it was believed all 4 of Kobe's daughters were on board the helicopter and had been killed. That then led to a number of ABC affiliates reporting the same information. That spread like wildfire. At the same time, you had ESPN reporting that one of the victims was Rick Fox, a former player for the Boston Celtics and LA Lakers. He was not on board, he is fine. You also have the BBC using B-roll not of Kobe, but of LeBron James, who is very much alive. I mean, you even have them showing in the clip James's jersey with his name in the clip, which I think really highlights how fast everyone was trying to get to this rather than getting it right. Though, on the note of what we do know, as far as what we know right now, right, let's talk about the facts. Initially, you had TMZ reporting that it was Kobe and 4 others who had died. Los Angeles Sheriff Alex Villanueva ended up saying that it was actually 9.
As the chief indicated, there were no survivors. We have a manifest that indicates that there was 9 people on board the aircraft. the pilot plus 8 individuals.
Those 9 being later identified as Kobe, his daughter Gianna, college baseball coach John Altobelli, his wife Carrie, and daughter Alyssa, as well as elementary school basketball coach Christina Mauser, a woman named Sarah Chester, her daughter Peyton, and the pilot Ara Zobayan. We also know that the helicopter took off from John Wayne Airport in Orange County just after 9 a.m. It reportedly passed over Boyle Heights and near Dodger Stadium. It circled Glendale and was reportedly on its way to Kobe's Mamba Academy in Thousand Oaks for a basketball game. As far as the helicopter, it had been in operation since 1991 and was a Sikorsky S-76B model. It had twin turboshaft engines, room for 12 passengers and 2 crew members. It was Kobe's private helicopter, one that he frequently used to beat LA traffic, and also, heartbreakingly, there's this clip going around now that a big part of why he had it was actually family.
I had to figure out a way where I could still train and focus on the craft, but still not compromise family time. And so that's when I looked into helicopters and be able to get down and back in 15 minutes. And that's when it started. And so my routine was always the same. Weights early in the morning, kids to school, fly down, practice like crazy, do my extra work, media, everything I needed to do, fly back, get back in carpool line, pick the kids up. And my wife was like, listen, I can pick them up. I'm like, no. I want to do that because like, you have road trips and times where you don't see your kids, man, So like every chance I get to see them and spend time with them, even if it's 20 minutes in the car, like I want that.
And also one of the big things I wanted to talk about with this story were the reactions. I mean, yesterday there was no shortage of them, whether it be friends and former teammates like Shaq, whether it be President Trump, whether it be former President Obama. Everyone was reacting to this to the point that it felt like just the day stopped. Like it was genuinely shocking. I remember getting the notifications on my phone and going, no. Like I felt like it couldn't be real. Like somehow, even though it makes no sense, he was like too big for something like this to happen. Even though every day we look at the world, anytime we look at a news story, we see that we're just one wrong corner away, one wrong step away, so vulnerable that it all just goes away. Like somehow he would be immune from this tragedy, but it was this kind of, I think the reason it hit so many different people is it was this reminder of everyone's mortality, everyone's vulnerability, and just the level of heartbreak associated with the situation. You don't want to think that it's real, that a mother, a father, a daughter died, that there is a mother who just lost her husband and her 13-year-old daughter. Right? This in addition to people who were fans of Kobe Bryant and his legacy and what he did for the sport of basketball and everything kind of there. As far as the rest of us, right, the bystanders to this tragedy, the weird, horrible, unfortunate, don't even want it gift of a tragedy is it gives you a fear, yes, but also an appreciation of life. I don't know how many others did it, but that news yesterday, it gave me that extra reason to FaceTime my dad, to check up on him, to let him know I love him, the things that you feel that you don't always say, or if you do say, maybe don't say as much, and hug my sons and my wife just in an extra, few seconds. So what I would say is if you had conflicted feelings around Kobe Bryant, or he was not even someone that was always on your radar, but you kind of knew that he existed, and all of a sudden yesterday it brought up really strong emotions, don't feel like that's weird or off. I think it's a very human thing. But also of note, because I mentioned, some people have conflicted feelings. Some people, went the complete opposite way, which I feel like we have to mention. As far as conflicted, I'll put Evan Rachel Wood in this category. Right, a lot of people know her from the HBO series Westworld. She tweeted, "What has happened is tragic. I am heartbroken for Kobe's family. He was a sports hero. He was also a rapist. And all of these truths can exist simultaneously." You also had people like comedian Ari Schaefer really almost go into the rejoicing category.
As I know, there's always a lot of hate, pain in the world, and there's always a bunch of terrible stories. And every once in a while, there's a good story. A good story comes out. The guy who got away with rape got his today. Kobe Bryant is a god. I'm here in Charlotte, the home of the team that originally drafted him. Maybe he wouldn't have raped that chick in Denver if he had stayed in Charlotte with the Hornets.
Well, a majority of the reactions to his tweets and his videos was, oh wow, this guy's a scumbag. We have seen a number of people bring up Bryant's 2003 sexual assault case that ended up getting dropped, right, kind of being brought back in the limelight as everyone's kind of talking about the life of Kobe Bryant. But ultimately, for today, that's where I'm going to end this one. It's a heartbreaking story in so many different ways, and my thoughts and well wishes, as I imagine, God, so many others, just go to the victims and their families. And of course, with this story, there are parts I'd love to know your opinions, but I'd really love to know kind of your thought process as you were kind of taking this whole story in. And then let's talk about some key things and updates around Donald Trump, the Senate impeachment trial, and now Trump's former national security advisor, John Bolton. Regarding Bolton, that's one of the main key things here, but kind of to bring you up to speed, over the last week, the Senate has been holding the trial portion of the impeachment proceedings. And for most of the week, we saw the Democrats making their case for impeachment, and there we saw them making a lot of the same general arguments that we've seen them make over the last few months, right? That Trump, as president, acted corruptly by asking Ukraine, a foreign country, to interfere in the 2020 election by announcing investigations into his political rival, Joe Biden, and his son Hunter, and that Trump withheld nearly $400 million in military aid to Ukraine that had already been approved by the Pentagon and Congress in order to pressure the country to do so, though they ended up releasing that money once word got out what was happening. The Democrats also arguing that Trump obstructed Congress by refusing to cooperate with the House's impeachment inquiry, this by blocking subpoenaed witnesses from testifying and not handing over key documents. Then, on Saturday, Trump's defense team began to lay out their arguments, with the lawyers arguing that the impeachment process was illegitimate, saying that the Democrats were just launching a partisan attack on Trump because they couldn't beat him, also arguing there was no explicit quid pro quo and that Trump was just concerned about corruption in general in Ukraine and had the right to suspend aid, also arguing that he acted within his presidential powers when he refused to let people in his administration testify before the House or provide documents. And today, as we're recording, the president's defense team is actually in the Senate for their second day of arguments. But now they have to do so under very different circumstances because things have changed dramatically in just the one day the Senate wasn't in session. And that's because yesterday, the New York Times reported that back in August, Trump told then security advisor John Bolton, quote, he wanted to continue freezing $391 million in security assistance to Ukraine until officials there helped with investigations into Democrats, including the Bidens. Right, and as far as where this information is coming from, right, is it from some anonymous source? No, this is actually according to an unpublished manuscript from John Bolton's upcoming book, with the Times also reporting that Bolton, along with Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Defense Secretary Mark Esper, quote, collectively pressed the president about releasing the aid nearly a dozen times in the preceding weeks after lower-level officials who worked on Ukraine issues began complaining about the holdup, but that Trump effectively rebuffed them, airing his long-standing grievances about Ukraine, which mixed legitimate efforts by some Ukrainians to back his Democratic 2016 opponent, Hillary Clinton, with unsupported accusations and outright conspiracy theories about the country, a key American ally. Bolton's book, which is called The Room Where It Happened, is set for publication on March 17th, and according to the Times, the allegations about Trump and the Ukraine aid were included in drafts of the manuscript that Bolton gave to associates in recent weeks, with the Times also reporting that Bolton had sent a draft to the White House, which is a standard part of the review process for administration officials who write books. But notably here, representatives for Bolton also say that they did not give the manuscript to the Times. And in a statement, Bolton's lawyers actually appeared to blame the White House for this disclosure, saying, it is clear, regrettably, from the New York Times article published today that the pre-publication review process has been corrupted and that information has been disclosed by persons other than those properly involved in reviewing the manuscript. With Bolton's lawyer also saying that he had given the White House the manuscript on December 30th, which is notable because it means that they have had this information for a while now. Now, as far as Donald Trump's response to this whole situation, he responded on Twitter late last night saying, I never told John Bolton that the aid to Ukraine was tied to investigations into Democrats, including the Bidens. In fact, he never complained about this at the time of his very public termination. If John Bolton said this, it was only to sell a book. With Trump taking to Twitter again this morning writing, the Democrat-controlled House never even asked John Bolton to testify. It is up to them, not up to the Senate, which I will say is definitively untrue, if not an outright lie. The Democrats did summon Bolton to testify back in October, but he declined, with John Bolton's lawyer citing instructions from the White House for former and current White House officials to not testify. Now, his lawyer did say that he would testify if he was subpoenaed, but, and this brings us kind of back to one of the key issues that we've talked about in the past, Democrats did not subpoena Bolton. This because the legal process of trying to get testimony or documents from witnesses who have been blocked by the White House could take months, if not years. Right, so that kind of covers the issue with the House, but all of a sudden we're seeing a different situation with the Senate. That's because at the beginning of January, John Bolton actually said that he would testify before the Senate. And that, in part, is why allowing witnesses is one of the key issues regarding the Senate trial. And so let's touch on what does this mean for the Senate trial moving forward, because there are a couple of major implications here. Right, so first of all, you now have Bolton and Democrats claiming that the former national security advisor is a first-hand witness to Donald Trump connecting the investigation into Biden to the withheld aid. And this is significant because Republicans and Trump's defense team have continually argued that there have been no first-hand eyewitnesses. In fact, while laying out Donald Trump's defense in the Senate on Saturday, you had Deputy White House counsel Michael Purpura say, not a single witness testified that the president himself said there was any connection between any investigations and security assistance, a presidential meeting, or anything else. Right, but now with this, it could poke a massive hole in that argument. Right? Because Democrats have tried to counter the Republican argument, saying that there are eyewitnesses, but Donald Trump has blocked them from testifying. Which brings us to the second implication this has for the trial. Even before the House voted to impeach Trump, there was a debate raging over whether or not new witnesses would be called to testify in the Senate trial. Democrats wanted to call 4 key witnesses that they said could have had first-hand accounts, including Bolton and acting White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney. But there, Republicans repeatedly refused, saying new evidence should not be introduced in the Senate portion of the trial. Though the counter-argument there is based on precedent, new witnesses were allowed to be called during Bill Clinton's impeachment trial. And as far as getting the ability to actually call key witnesses, that's kind of been seen as probably not. Though this new information has the possibility to change things, because in the Senate, it would only require a simple majority to get new witnesses. Right? And so what we had seen is that the Democrats had been focusing on getting a group of 4 key Republicans to agree to allow witnesses. So we ended up seeing is in a statement last night, impeachment managers said, there can be no doubt now that Mr. Bolton directly contradicts the heart of the president's defense and therefore must be called as a witness at the impeachment trial of President Trump. The Senate trial must seek the full truth, and Mr. Bolton has vital information to provide. There is no defensible reason to wait until his book is published when the information he has to offer is critical to the most important decision senators must now make, whether to convict the president of impeachable offenses. Right? And so now some of those 4 Republicans seem to be leaning towards voting in favor of new witnesses. In a statement today, Republican Senator Susan Collins said, the reports about John Bolton's book strengthen the case for witnesses and have prompted a number of conversations among my colleagues. We also saw Republican Senator Mitt Romney say, I think it's increasingly likely that other Republicans will join those of us who think we should hear from John Bolton. Although we should note that both of those senators had indicated in the past that they would be interested in hearing more witnesses. Right? So the real question is whether or not their colleagues would get on board as well. But also understand, like, it's not this overwhelming wave. We saw other Republicans pushing back, with some echoing Trump and accusing Bolton of just trying to sell books. People like John Barrasso, who said in a press conference today, it's a story about selective leaks from a book that you can pre-order on Amazon.com from John Bolton. Meanwhile, Senator Rand Paul questioned Bolton's credibility. You have an angry, disgruntled employee, and I think he'll say anything. We also saw Lindsey Graham, who's been a strong supporter of Donald Trump, saying on Fox News last night, saying, if we seek witnesses, then we're going to throw the country into chaos. But then this morning, we saw him tweet, if there is a desire and decision by the Senate to call Democratic witnesses, then at minimum, the Senate should allow President Trump to call all relevant witnesses he has requested. And that seeming to reference the fact that Trump has called for Biden and his son Hunter to testify. There are also other GOP requested witnesses. But that said, this is still a developing story as far as what will happen here. We have to wait and see. Democrats would need to pull 4 Republicans. Can they do that? If they can, what kind of witnesses are we going to see? But with all of that said, of course, like with everything we talk about, I'd love to know your thoughts on this. And that is where I'm going to end today's show. Thank you again for watching my little daily weekday news show. Also, if you're looking for more to watch after this video, maybe you missed the last Philip DeFranco show, you want to catch up, or you want to watch the newest Rogue Rocket video, you can click or tap right there to watch either of those. But with that said, of course, as always, my name's Philip DeFranco. You've just been filled in. I love yo faces, and I'll see you tomorrow.